Now I want to ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation like the one I'm about to describe? You're dressed beautifully, your hair is styled perfectly, and you think everything is just right. Yet you sense something off about the way people are looking at you. No one tells you outright, but you feel that those glances aren't normal. You weren't taken seriously among friends. Your words were cut off in a meeting. The person you were interested in ignored you, and you ask yourself deep down, why? The answer, however, isn't anything major. It lies in small habits you haven't noticed. Your appearance isn't defined by the beautiful outfit you wore that day. It's shaped by the way you speak, your confident demeanor, and most importantly, the value you place on yourself. When you enter a room, the people around you pick up on all of these things much faster than you realize. In this video, what I really want to share with you are the details of these points. And my goal here is definitely not to turn you into someone else. It's to help bring out the confident, self-loving woman who's already inside you, through small but effective, simple yet truly transformative habits. By the way, before we move on to the first point, I have a very small request. Please write, "I won't look cheap," in the comments. Because writing something down is actually a very different process from simply keeping it in your mind. As you know, a thought floating in your mind can become a much more concrete decision once it's put into writing. You didn't just stumble upon this video by chance. So by writing this comment right now, you'll be inspiring others as well. If you'd like, let's start with the first point right away. 1. Avoid overusing accessories. A few well-chosen pieces will help you look more stylish. When you wake up in the morning and look in the mirror, have you ever noticed how much you're wearing? For example, a few delicate necklaces, earrings, a belt buckle, and a ring, all at once. I understand that each piece might be beautiful on its own. However, seeing them all together at the same time doesn't create a high-quality impression, because, as you know, an overwhelming look can make people perceive you as trying too hard or as someone who isn't fully confident in themselves. Of course, accessories are meant to complement your outfit, I get that, but letting them overshadow your outfit isn't the right approach. And once you grasp the difference between these two things I'm mentioning, you'll already be a step ahead in terms of your overall look. Think about it this way. For example, the most beautiful people I generally know in life often wear a single, simple, yet striking detail. Let me put it this way. It could be a delicate necklace or a simple single ring. And when those people enter a room, what's actually beautiful isn't the accessories they're wearing. It's them who stand out first. That's the whole point here. In other words, an accessory should simply be a tool that complements you. But the moment an accessory starts to overshadow you, it essentially means something's off. When I say less, it doesn't mean being deprived of something. Less means making a conscious choice. For example, if I'm wearing a necklace that day, you might choose not to wear earrings or keep them very simple. Or let's say you're wearing a chunky bracelet, you could skip the ring. That way, you won't create too much visual clutter. Your outfit already tells your story. The role of accessories is to support that look in a small but meaningful way. Too many, as you'll agree, end up confusing the story here. Of course, there's this. An accessory is, in general, something that tries to cover up something else. It's like saying, draw your attention here and don't look there. But sometimes it backfires, and it ends up creating the opposite effect. In other words, even if people aren't aware of it, they might sense a cluttered look. But when you present yourself with just your appearance, the person across from you can more easily focus their energy on your face, your eyes, and especially on what you're saying. This makes it easier to establish a connection. By the way, I know this is at least the third, maybe even the fourth video you've watched on my channel, and the fact that you still haven't subscribed really saddens me, because seeing you here and essentially moving forward together on this journey is incredibly valuable to me. If you subscribe, you'll be supporting me in the strongest way possible and will never lose touch. Also, there's a new feature called Hype. If you tap that, it's said to be very helpful for the progression of the videos. Thank you so much in advance. 2. Avoid overdoing it when using perfume. A light, pleasant scent is enough. Here's something I'm going to say. It's probably happened to you too. For example, before you even see the person entering the room, you start to pick up their scent right away. Then the door opens, and the moment they step inside, a heavy, suffocating scent hits your nose. Without even realizing it, your mind starts forming an impression of that person. And you'll agree, it's not a pleasant one. That's exactly why perfume is as powerful a tool for making an impression as appearance itself. In other words, if used correctly, it truly completes you. If used incorrectly, it can ruin your entire look. So while perfume might seem like a mere detail, the impression it leaves can have a far greater impact than you might think. Now, here's the thing. The true power lies in subtlety. It should be felt but not sought out. When someone walks past you, they should think to themselves, how lovely they smell, but they shouldn't immediately figure out the source. That's the balance I'm talking about. While an ordinary scent remains ordinary, a scent used correctly can actually become an unforgettable memory. Because here's the truth, the sense of smell connects directly to the most emotional part of our brain. So people might forget your face or even what you said, but rest assured they'll never forget your scent. That's why, when choosing and using perfume, you really need to leave the right impression. Now, you might ask, where should I spray the perfume? Many people get this wrong. They spray it on their clothes or into the air and walk through it, wasting the perfume and failing to achieve the desired effect. The truth is, there are certain pulse points, the wrists, behind the ears, the neck. These are the points where your body's warmth is most concentrated. By gently spraying the perfume on these spots, you'll achieve a subtle, long-lasting effect that lingers throughout the day. Spraying on one or two of these points is more than enough, because when it combines with your body's natural warmth, it will naturally create the exact effect you're aiming for. Of course, the season you're in and the environment you're in are also crucial factors. In other words, reading the context is just as important when choosing a perfume. I'd also like to mention a practical point. Over time, you get used to that scent and might think it's not strong enough. For this reason, applying extra perfume is a huge mistake, because the scent you can no longer detect might still be very strong for the person next to you. So when you apply it in the morning, you can assume you've met your daily dose. If you want to refresh it in the afternoon, a very light touch will suffice. 3. Speak slowly and clearly. Speaking hurriedly or stammering clearly shows that you lack confidence. Now, my friend, what I want to say here is this. When some people start speaking, everyone falls silent and listens. What they say may not even be anything particularly special, but their words carry weight. There is a sense of confidence in their voices. And the opposite is also true. Some people speak, but no one really listens. Words pile up on top of each other, new sentences start before the previous ones end, and there's a sense of urgency in their voice. The difference between these two scenarios often has less to do with what's said and more to do with how it's said. Realizing that your speaking speed and clarity affect people's respect for you far more than you might think is a true turning point. So let me ask you this. Why is speaking quickly so common? Because most of us have this inner voice while speaking. Speak up quickly or they'll cut you off, or if I talk too long, I'll bore them. These thoughts are entirely fueled by fear, and that fear reflects in the voice. Words stick together, breaths are held, sentences are swallowed. But consider the opposite. Someone who speaks slowly conveys the message, I'm here. What I have to say is important, and you're worth listening to. This is a silent declaration of self-confidence. And even if people don't consciously notice it, they sense it instinctively. Of course, there's also this. When you speak quickly, the likelihood of being misunderstood increases significantly. The person you're speaking to struggles to keep up, misses some words, and eventually either hesitates to ask for clarification or misunderstands. This creates serious gaps in communication. But when you speak slowly and clearly, every word falls into place. People understand you more easily, ask for fewer repetitions, and don't lose patience with you. Being understandable comes before appearing intelligent, because even the deepest idea vanishes into thin air if it isn't understood. Never forget that. Breath is everything in this regard. Most people aren't even aware that they're holding their breath while speaking. They continue without taking a breath between sentences, and after a while, their voice trembles, words stumble, and anxiety grows. Yet those brief pauses between sentences are not a sign of weakness, but of strength. Saying, "just a second," to take a breath, gather your thoughts, and allow the person across from you to process what you've said. All of these actually add value to the conversation. When you stop fearing silence, you'll realize your voice rests on a much firmer foundation. 4. Make sure your clothes fit your body well. For example, on an ordinary day, you tried on a piece of clothing in the store, it felt amazing, so you bought it. But when you got home and put it on again, something felt off. Maybe it was a bit too loose. Maybe the shoulders didn't sit right. Maybe the waist was undefined. And that piece of clothing stayed in the closet. Because a garment that doesn't fit you well, no matter how beautiful it is, won't carry you. You'll end up carrying it. And this difference is felt when you look in the mirror, but more importantly, it's instantly sensed by the people around you. Of course, wearing clothes that fit your body is actually one of the most visible forms of self-respect. It's not about body measurements, it's about care. Whether you're slim, plus size, tall or short, doesn't matter. Everybody has a cut that suits it, and the moment you find that cut, you'll look taller, more put together, and more confident right where you stand. Clothing isn't meant to hide or exaggerate your body, it's meant to frame your best self. Once you internalize this, your approach to shopping will completely change. Actually, there's another truth here. There's a serious misconception about loose-fitting clothes. Many people wear loose clothes thinking it should be comfortable. But loose clothing often makes the body look bulkier and more unkempt than it actually is. Especially when the shoulder seam doesn't sit squarely on the shoulder, the sleeves sag, or the waistline disappears, it creates the impression that the garment isn't just on you, it's swallowing you whole. Feeling comfortable is nice, but thinking you look comfortable is another matter. A comfortable garment can still fit your body measurements. These aren't mutually exclusive. In addition, let's consider the issue of tight-fitting clothing. There's a belief that wearing tight clothes means looking stylish, but that's not entirely true. Very tight clothing makes it difficult to move, ruins your posture, and reveals every detail of your body. This often creates the exact opposite of the desired effect. Style isn't about squeezing your body into something, it's about carrying it in its natural state in the best possible way. An outfit that doesn't pull when you sit, feels comfortable when you walk, yet still highlights your silhouette, stands out above the rest. The critical question here is, how do you find the right fit? Of course, you don't necessarily need a tailor or fashion expertise for this. You just need to pay attention to a few simple things. The shoulder seam should sit perfectly on your shoulder. The chest area shouldn't be too tight or too loose. The pants should fit snugly at the waist, neither sagging nor feeling constricting. And, most importantly, when you wear that outfit, you should feel comfortable in it, but also look put together from the outside. You need to check how it looks while you're walking and sitting, not just when you're looking in the mirror. In the end, never forget this. Sometimes all you need to do is take an outfit from your closet to a tailor. A small waist adjustment, a hem shortening, or a shoulder alteration can completely transform that outfit. And this is far less expensive than buying a new outfit. An expensive outfit that doesn't fit your body looks much worse than a cheap one that fits perfectly, because people don't see the price tag, but they always sense how the outfit looks on you. 5. Pay attention to your table manners while eating. Eating noisily and making a mess really damages your image. I want to start with a harsh truth. No one will explicitly tell you anything about table manners. That's exactly what makes it so dangerous. One person eats noisily, another talks with their mouth full, another cleans their plate as if it were their last meal. And everyone at the table sees it, feels it, but no one says a word. They just take mental notes. People may not say much at the table, but they observe a lot. And those observations shape the respect, or lack thereof, they have for you. That's why, even though table manners may seem like a small detail, they are actually one of the clearest windows into a person's character. Now, consider this scenario. Let's take the issue of eating noisily, the sounds made while chewing, the spoon clinking against the plate, the way the glass is placed on the table. These are all things done unconsciously but felt very clearly by the other party, especially in settings like a business lunch, a first date, or a formal gathering. These details take on much greater significance. No one will tell you, "You're eating noisily," but the impression you leave behind after getting up from that table will include that. And the saddest part is this. Maybe you said wonderful things throughout the meal, but that detail overshadowed everything. Of course, there's also this situation. Speaking with your mouth full is right at the heart of this issue. Someone asks you a question, you've just taken a bite, and you try to answer immediately. Does that sound familiar? It's a very common habit, and most people do it without thinking. Yet the only thing you should do in that moment is give a polite signal and wait to swallow. This brief pause doesn't make you look small. On the contrary, it makes you look bigger. Because that small act of patience says, "I respect both myself and you." And this message leaves a much deeper impact than you might think. Don't forget that paying attention to your plate, the table, and your surroundings is also an important part of the picture. Sauces splattering around, stains that won't come out, napkins left scattered. These might be small mishaps, but what matters is how you react in that moment. Someone who cleans it up immediately and quietly says, "I'm aware and I care." Someone who ignores it or acts indifferent says the exact opposite. The way you react to these small moments at the table reveals how attentive and self-assured you are in daily life. Looking at it from another angle, we also need to talk about eating speed. Eating hurriedly, as if someone were about to take the food from your hands, not only harms digestion, but also presents an off-putting sight to the person across from you. Eating slowly isn't just a healthy habit, it's also a sign of respect for the others at the table. A shared meal is actually a moment for building a connection. Rushing through that moment means wasting the opportunity to form a genuine bond with the person across from you. Savoring your food and giving the people at the table your time makes you appear very different from what you might think. 6. Address people by name. This simple habit makes you come across as thoughtful and polite. I'd actually like to start by asking you something. Have you ever experienced this? Someone says your name to you, and a few minutes later, while telling you something, they use your name again, and you think to yourself, "Wait, they remembered my name," and without realizing it, you feel a warmth toward that person. It may seem like a small moment, but its impact is huge, because a name is the most personal thing a person possesses. From the day they were born, they've been called by that sound, recognized by that name, and existed through that name. And when you remember and use that name, you're actually saying, "You matter to me, I've noticed you." It's that simple, yet that powerful. So why don't most people do this? The answer is actually very simple. They aren't listening. When someone introduces themselves, the mind is already busy formulating the next sentence. "Hello, I'm Aishi," the person says, and you immediately follow up with, "How are you?" The name goes in one ear and out the other. This isn't a memory issue, it's an attention issue, and realizing this is crucial. Because the only thing you need to do to remember a name is to be fully present in that moment of introduction. without checking your phone, without thinking about other things, just focusing on that person. Of course, there's also this. Using the name after you've learned it is an art in itself. Saying, she did this, she said that in every sentence doesn't sound natural. It feels a bit odd. But using it at the right moments, in the right measure, creates an incredible impact. Once at the beginning of the conversation, once during an emotional moment in the middle, and once when saying goodbye. That's enough. Every time that name is used, the person across from you subconsciously feels a connection. And in their eyes, you stop being just an ordinary person and become someone who truly cares and shows consideration. In addition, addressing people by their names shows that you see them as individuals, not just as part of a crowd. Waiters, security guards, cleaning staff. Many people address these individuals with general terms like brother, ma'am, or sir instead of their names. Yet that person has a name, and using it transforms that moment entirely. The person in front of you will smile, act a bit more warmly, and remember you. And this small human touch becomes a trait that sets you apart from most people around you. Let's say you forgot their name. What should you do then? This happens to everyone, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. But how you handle it matters. Saying, "I'm sorry, could you repeat your name? I didn't catch it clearly," is an honest and polite solution. People understand this. But brushing it off with generic terms like bro, buddy, or ma'am, without even asking, sends the message, "Your name wasn't important to me," without you even realizing it. A little honesty is always better than a long-term habit of brushing things off. Ultimately, never forget this. This habit may sound simple, but far fewer people actually put it into practice than you might think. And that's exactly why you stand out when you do it. People can't quite explain why they feel good after being with you, but they carry a warmth with them. A large part of that warmth comes from the fact that you truly saw them. And seeing is very different from just looking. Remembering a name is remembering a person. Such a small yet profound habit. 7. Keep your promises. Someone who can't be trusted is seen as cheap. Take a moment to reflect. How many people in your life do you truly trust? I mean, someone you can say, "If this person says something, it'll happen." Someone you know stands by their word, shows up on time, and doesn't back down from their decisions. Isn't that a small number? And now think about this. Are you that person in the eyes of others? This question might feel uncomfortable, but it's very important, because reliability comes long before appearance. Even the most well-groomed, stylish, or charismatic person will eventually lose their luster if they don't stand by their word. People don't forget that. Here's the reality. Unfortunately, making a promise is an action that's often taken too lightly. Phrases like, "I'll handle it," "I'll look into it," "I'll make it happen," or "I'll come by," are used so frequently in daily life that no one takes them seriously anymore. And maybe you don't even mean them fully when you say them, but the person across from you hears it, takes note, and waits. When that expectation isn't met, something breaks silently. Not a major fracture, just a small crack. But every broken promise widens that crack a little more. And one day, you'll realize that people no longer trust you as much as they used to. They don't reach out to you as often, and they don't involve you in their affairs as much as before. The critical question here is, why are promises made but not kept? Most of the time, there's no ill intent behind it. It's just that saying yes in the moment is easier. Saying no is hard. Causing disappointment is hard. Setting boundaries is hard. That's why people say sure even to things they can't do. But this is exactly where honesty comes into play. Saying "I can't do that" from the start is far more valuable than apologizing later, because someone who can say no truly means what they say when they say yes, and that yes carries much more weight. Of course, there's also this. Reliability isn't built on grand gestures, but on small acts of consistency. being on time, returning when you say you will, doing the work you promised, sticking to your decisions. None of these are major sacrifices. But when they all come together, they create the impression that this person is reliable. And this impression is what makes people open doors for you, recommend you, and want to keep you by their side. Reliability may seem like a character trait, but it's actually a set of habits. And like any habit, it's shaped over time and through conscious effort. The bottom line, people rarely voice the words they use to describe you, but they form a definition in their minds. A reliable person, someone who does what they say, someone who keeps their word, or the exact opposite. And that image is the sum of the small choices you've made over the years. Keeping a small promise today shapes how people see you tomorrow. Looking cheap isn't just about clothes, it's about character, and character is rebuilt every day. When you make a promise, keep it. It's that simple, yet that profound. 8. If you don't know something, you should say, I don't know. Making things up ruins your credibility. It's happened to all of us. For example, someone asked you a question. You didn't know the exact answer, but saying, I don't know, felt awkward, so you started making things up. Maybe you gave an answer that was half true, half guess, half made up. That moment passed, but later that person found out the truth. And the look they gave you, that look says it all. Because people can forgive misinformation, but they find it much harder to forgive an answer that was made up, whether intentionally or out of desperation. In that moment, a small crack in trust forms, and that crack stays there much longer than you might think. Then this question comes to mind. Why is it so hard to say, I don't know? Because most of us equate not knowing with being inadequate. It's as if not knowing something implies we have no right to speak on the matter or that our credibility is at stake. Yet the opposite is true. Someone who can say, I don't know, is actually saying, I'm honest, I trust myself, and I don't want to mislead you. This statement isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of maturity, and people sense this. If someone has an answer for every question, we secretly doubt them, but we trust someone who says, I don't know, let me look into it, because that person is realistic. I also want to point out that the most insidious aspect of making things up is this. In the short term, it seems to work. It fills the silence of the moment, deflects the topic, and saves you from an awkward situation. But in the long run, the price you pay is much higher. Because those made-up answers pile up. One day someone will say, last time you said this, and you won't even remember what you said, or it turns out what you said was wrong. And in that moment, the trust you've built crumbles instantly. Whereas if you'd simply said from the start, I'm not sure about this, nothing would have crumbled. Honesty is difficult in the short term, but it's the most solid foundation in the long run. The most surprising part is this. Saying, I don't know, doesn't actually end a conversation. It deepens it. Saying, I don't know, but I'm curious. Should we look into it together? Or, I don't know, but here's what I'm thinking, transforms that moment into a genuine exchange of ideas. The person across from you sees your honesty and begins to speak more freely, because you've brought a sense of security to that environment. Not knowing isn't something to be ashamed of, it's something to be curious about. And someone who's curious is always more interesting than someone who brushes things off with made-up answers. Don't worry about applying this to daily life. Actually, all you need to do is get used to that uncomfortable feeling. At first, when you say, I don't know, something inside you tenses up. You feel as though you've lost something. But that feeling passes. And once it does, you realize that the person across from you respects you more, trusts you more. Because in that moment, you stepped into that moment of honesty that everyone avoids, and you stayed there. This small act of courage eventually becomes one of the most important traits that defines you as a reliable person in your circle. 9. Don't talk about yourself all the time. Being a good listener is more valuable than being a good speaker. In the modern world we live in, when you talk to some people, you constantly listen to their lives, their stories, and their thoughts. When you go home, you feel a strange emptiness inside because you never got to speak. But there's also the opposite. When you talk to some people, you can't get a word in. Every sentence is cut short. Every topic somehow circles back to that person's life. My situation was like this, I think. And the conversation ends, and you part ways. What do you feel inside? Exhaustion. Because not being listened to wears a person down, and you might be causing that exhaustion in others without even realizing it. If we look at it from another angle, why do you think constantly talking about oneself is so common? Because it actually stems from a very human need. Everyone wants to be understood, seen, and valued, and talking seems like the easiest way to achieve that. You try to make your presence felt by saying, I did this, I achieved that, this happened in my life. But here's the ironic part. The more you talk about yourself, the less interest the other person has. Because interest is a two-way energy. If you always give, the other person takes and walks away. If you always take, the other person gives and grows weary. In essence, true listening is very different from simply waiting in silence. Many people don't actually listen while the other person is speaking. They're just waiting for their turn. They're formulating their next sentence in their head, planning how to jump into the conversation. This is fake listening, and the other person senses it. True listening, however, is being fully present. It is seeing the other person's words, the tone of their voice, and the expression on their face. And it is listening not just to respond, but to understand. This difference may seem small, but its impact is immense. A person who feels truly listened to will never forget you. Remember, it's not the person who talks the most, but the one who listens the most who is the most powerful person in the room. Because the listener gathers information, gets to know people, and builds connections. The speaker, on the other hand, only shares what they know. Someone who listens quietly and asks the right question at the right moment leaves a much deeper impression than someone who talks for hours on end. Because that question says, I heard you and I'm curious. And this feeling is rarely given to people. When you give it, the person across from you feels something warm inside. They can't put a name to it, but they'll seek you out. To change this habit, first know this. Simply noticing it is already a big step. In your future conversations, set a small rule for yourself. If the person across from you is telling a story, don't interrupt before they finish. When they're done, don't immediately jump into your own story. Ask a question first. Simple questions like, how did you feel in that moment? Or, what happened next? Tell the other person, I'm still here with you. And that person opens up, goes deeper, and trusts you. Over time, you'll notice that the less you talk, the more people start sharing with you. This paradox sums up the power of listening. In the end, people remember you not for how much you talk, but for how they feel when you're with them. If they say, I feel good when I talk to this person, you're probably listening to them. And that feeling lasts longer in their minds than the most expensive outfit, the finest perfume, or the most impressive speech. Listening isn't a courtesy, it's a power. And the person who wields this power is noticed when they enter a room and missed when they leave. Talk less about yourself. See more of the person across from you. It all starts there. 10. Learn to apply a simple, natural-looking makeup that suits your face. Looking natural is an art, just as much as wearing too much or no makeup at all. Now, the critical point here is this. There are two extremes when it comes to makeup, and both make the same mistake. The first, not wearing any makeup but looking unkempt. The second, applying so much makeup that the real you disappears. What they have in common is this. The result isn't natural. and people can sense what isn't natural. Foundation that looks like eyeshadow, unnatural eyebrows, a color that doesn't match your skin tone. These don't just fail to hide the makeup, they make it even more noticeable. Yet the purpose of good makeup is the exact opposite. It's not done so that no one notices you're wearing makeup, but to bring out your best self. As many of us know, light makeup actually follows a very simple principle. Highlight your face's most beautiful feature and simply balance the rest. Everyone has something on their face. Beautiful eyes, defined cheekbones, full lips, clear skin. And finding that feature is far more effective than slathering on dozens of products, because the person across from you won't say she's wearing so much makeup, but rather she has such beautiful eyes. That's the illusion created by the right makeup. You haven't actually changed, you've just made your best self a little more visible. Also, skincare comes long before makeup. Skipping this is one of the biggest mistakes. No matter how good the products you apply are, if your skin is dry, tired and dull, the result won't be what you want, because makeup is applied on a canvas, and the condition of that canvas determines everything. Regular cleansing, moisturizing, and sun protection allow your skin to regain its natural radiance over time. And once you reach that point, you can make a huge difference with very little effort. Healthy skin is the best foundation for makeup. Sometimes it's even enough on its own. Of course, color selection is also a very critical part of this process. Makeup that leaves the neck a different shade from the face, eyeshadow that clashes with your outfit, or blush that covers your forehead instead of your cheeks. All of these are done with good intentions, but the result creates the exact opposite effect. Choosing products that match your skin tone, knowing whether your undertone is warm or cool, and recognizing which colors brighten your face. These aren't complicated concepts. A little trial and error, some observation, and a bit of time spent in front of the mirror will give you the answers to these questions. And once you find those answers, applying makeup becomes much easier and more enjoyable. After these 10 points, I'd like to summarize briefly. None of the things we've discussed are trying to transform you into a completely different person. On the contrary, they aim to bring out the confident, dignified person who is already within you, but in a much clearer way. As I said, people get a certain feeling when they first see you, and that feeling doesn't come from grand gestures. It stems from small but consistent, regular habits. None of these habits actually require money or special talents. All you need is to be aware of them. If you're taking anything away from this video today, please let it be this, because looking cheap isn't a fate, it's unfortunately a habit. And as you know, every habit can be changed. It's entirely up to you to start improving this right now, with just one step. If what I've shared resonates with you, I'd be thrilled if you joined us. Let's meet again in similar videos. Don't forget to value yourself, because you are your greatest investment. Until we meet in the next video,